I gotta get these edges back together.
Y'all started.
Listen, this is the best decision I ever made was getting locks. I will never go
I'm
back
almost there.
ever. But hello all. One
Hello.
person that's here right now.
Well, everybody already think I got them because this has been in since December. Yeah, but it's my regular hair. Then I found out I got almost 12 inches of hair, so
Yeah.
they're gonna be the cost of a newborn baby.
Micro locks are not cheap.
Mm-mm.
Not at all.
Isn't which one of your kids has the micro? It's
Mhm.
Izzy has them, right?
Wait,
Yeah,
don't.
but I did hers.
What does
Mhm.
Elias have then? His is.
Eliza has locks too. I guess his is micro locks too,
Okay.
but they're big like dreads.
Oh wow. Okay.
Oh, that's my wit tip.
Alright. Hey y'all, we see y'all popping in. Say hello. Say hello. Let us know you here. We're trying to wait till more people come in to kind of get ourselves started.
Thank you.
Well, y'all had some good topic. Well, one of the topics that Ashley sent us went completely way over my head. So y'all gonna have to explain to me what that person was saying because I
Yeah, I didn't understand
wasn't
it either.
following.
Oh, okay. I'll explain what you.
Hello there.
Hi.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, mama.
Hey.
Dr. Shook Tastic in my favorite.
Oh,
Speaking of aunties, I feel like every other TikTok now got the aunties. I seen another one. It was called the aunties loading.
oh,
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, the aunties ain't really like
yeah,
just
that's not.
I know. It's just cool to see. So
No,
many.
what you're saying is you didn't see it until we was the aunties.
I don't knew of one other auntie set before us, and it was two ladies.
Mm-hmm. But what were you? Now, what was the thing? What was the topic?
Oh,
What was the question?
let me pull that.
I didn't understand it either, Amber.
Hi. I didn't either. When she sent it, I'm like, it might be me, but it went right over my head.
That's Amber right there. So what he was saying was based off of our theme last week, which last week, if you watched the show, we talked about Black portrayals in media for Black History Month. That was our week of Black History stuff. So he was basically saying, I haven't watched Tyler Perry's new movie yet with Kelly rolling in it on Netflix. I haven't watched it because y'all, you know, from last week how I feel about Tyler Perry. So I haven't watched it yet, but I want to support Kelly and Trevante Rhodes, so I will watch it. But he was saying, given Tyler Perry's recent release, I really need to know how we are supposed to help support something that is just so basically so mediocre. Like, why do we have to support mediocrity just because of somebody Black, especially when it comes to our media? And then he was saying, I don't know if y'all watched the show Black AF, like it's fuck Kenya what's his name? That dude, Blackish.
Kenya Morris or something like that. Kenya Barris.
Yeah, he did a skit about this, and like the Black community slaughtered him for it, and the Black press slaughtered him for it. So he was so basically this person was saying, I'd love to know from a clinical standpoint how respectability and respect coincide with hurtful representations depicted as progress. So he's basically saying, how do we respect those portrayals of us that actually hinder our progress? That's the gist of it. How do we respect mediocre work? And should we have to just like it and love it and push it and support it just because it's Black?
I got an answer for that. My own personal answer.
Okay.
Again, Black people are not a monolith. There are going to be different groups for different people. If you don't like Tyler Perry and you don't want to watch the movie, don't. There are plenty of people who have been riding with Tyler Perry for literally since his play days, because I loved his plays. His plays are unmatched. The plays are unmatched. So you don't have to watch it. There is space for somebody to be mediocre. Black people do not always have to strive for excellence. And this is just my own personal opinion, because I feel like sometimes when we strive for excellence, we tend to go to the extreme level. So now we have anxiety, depression, because we're trying to reach something and consistently try to reach this when it's impairing our functioning. So for me, mediocre can exist among excellence. That's just my personal opinion. I feel like the same thing happens in music. Like everybody doesn't like Sexy Red. They go after her. They don't like her music. She's trash. She's not a rapper. She's this. And I'm just like, okay, but she represents a group of women that, okay, maybe some of y'all don't want to listen to. That's fine, but she still represent a group of people, and they can still exist in our community without us being shitty toward them. Now, if there was some unsafe stuff going on, then I could understand holding people accountable. Okay, that's fine. But I think that there's space for everybody, regardless if you don't like them or not. There's space for everybody. And I feel like sometimes we get hypocritical in that message. We tell people to be yourself. We tell people, oh, well, we want you to be here. We want you to be a part of this. But then the moment that we try to pull them in, we also pushing them out. So we got to make up our minds as a community as to what we trying to do here. Are we accepting of everybody, or are we only selecting people based on how this person makes you feel, as far as, or based on how this person's status is, or that's just my personal opinion.
I mean, you just dropped like 50 gems, dimes, whatever you want to call it, up in that role.
I've been sick for 4 days,
and I'm like, damn, how many can we get?
I definitely agree. I feel like we should also be able to critique our artists. Like I always say, nobody's above critique. So it shouldn't be just like we're not a monolith and everybody doesn't have to like everything. You also don't have to kill people when they say it was horrible, when they say the writing is horrible, or the songs are horrible, or it's not up to par. There was a time where, and not so much excellence, you just had to be good. Like it had to be at least good. I don't want us to strive for excellence all the time, because just like they get to be mediocre, we should get to be mediocre too. We shouldn't have to do twice as much and work twice as hard to get somewhere. That saying bothers me. But we should be able to critique. At the end of the day, we should be able to say, no, this actually wasn't really good writing. It actually wasn't. And that's okay. Like that doesn't mean I don't like Black artists or certain things. That just means it wasn't good. And specifically, I think the people who do have issue with Tyler Perry or anybody, is the portrayal harmful? Like it could be true, but also is it harmful? And for me with Tyler Perry, my only hang up is don't say that you are uplifting through your work when it is harmful, when it is the same stereotypical lines, when I can tell your plot immediately when I 5 minutes into the show. That's my only issue. We are allowed to critique it.
I think that we don't look at everybody the same. And we kind of only critique what other people, we only say the same thing that other people say. So there's a whole lot of people that can get critiqued when it comes to mediocre work, or making people look like monoliths, or making Black people look bad. And I love me some 50 Cent, but every person in the community is not a drug dealer either, but people love that. Every person in the community is not a crackhead either, but people love to see that. Everybody's not a deadbeat dad. Everybody's not a mom that needs to be saved. But if, like you said, life imitates art, all of these portrayals represent somebody in our culture. So we're looking at it, and not me, but some of us are looking at it and being like, I don't like that they keep on doing that. And then somebody else is kind of like, well, shoot, that's what's real. So different things are real to different people.
Yeah. Hi, Mika. Hi, Benita.
Hi. Hey, Chanel.
I agree. So I mean, as y'all are talking, I have so many freaking thoughts that I don't even know where to start. So I'm gonna just pull from what Shug just said. But I think that we are not all the same, right? But it's kind of like I don't see what Auntie Ashley is saying about Tyler Perry and the way that he portrays Black people, or I don't see negative portrayals in his work. I see someone who found their niche, like he found what he was good at. He found the type of storyline or whatever. Yes, it's predictable, but he's good at it. So it's kind of like us as clinicians. We find our specialty. We work with the general population, but we find our specialty. I work really well with kids, right? And I can work with kids with my eyes closed in my sleep and see some progress with most kids. Now, let me not say all. But that's my specialty. That's what I'm really good at, and that's what I stick to most of the time. So what I'm seeing with like what we're talking about in the media, Tyler Perry is doing that. 50 Cent is doing that. All of his shows have pretty much the same storyline. I mean, they're good, but there's killing, there's drugs, there's all of that because that's what he's good at portraying. I mean, that's his life too that he experienced. But I just really I'm not seeing. I think mediocre is based on your perspective. I just love to see us doing what we're doing, period. Because I don't know that, 50 years ago, or let me not say 50, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, we had this type of platform to do these things.
Oh, I do agree he does what works for him. He absolutely does. He sticks to his, what's it called? He sticks to his
genre.
His genre. He sticks. And I don't blame him for that because at the end of the day, he has a solid fan base. Like Auntie Keith said, I've been watching Tyler Perry since his play days. I've gone to his plays. And his play days are not too much different than his film and TV show and movies. But I guess for me, I'm not looking at it like clinicians who have a niche that they fit into. I look for, like we was talking about on the show, you look for broader examples, especially from particular artists. Like expand a little bit, just open it up, open up the possibilities. Do something like Jasmine's Blues. I will admit that I loved, and that's Tyler Perry. He did Jasmine's Blues, but it was very different from what he typically does. So it's like, where's the growth? Where's the expansion? If you keep doing the same thing, just like in a clinical setting, if you're gonna keep doing the same thing, there's no changes, no growth being made. So where's the growth?
Or if you keep doing the same thing, you get better at it and you will naturally grow doing that thing. So if you look at Tyler Perry's earlier movie, well, even from his plays to his first movies up until now, you will see a change. You will see some growth. But I just think that, and I don't want to stick us straight with Tyler Perry this whole time. I just think that when people try to do too much, they get judged for that too. So you're judging someone for doing the same thing, working within their genre or within their niche, and really like honing in on that. But then if you were to do way too much, then it'd be like, now you're doing way too much. It's like we can't win either way. And that's the struggle that people have in day-to-day life, regardless. You can't win either way.
Yeah.
So why do we do that to each other is the question. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Auntie Shug.
No, what I was about to say, if you look past kind of a certain person's niche, especially in the Black community, the one thing I do appreciate is what they bring to the community. So I could say all day, I'm tired of looking at drug dealers on TV, and I am. But at the same time, 50 Cent just bought this gigantic plot of land in Shreveport, and it's going to add how many jobs to Black people?
And Tyler did that too.
Big old thing in Atlanta, and it added how many jobs to Black people? He literally took care of Cicely Tyson, takes care of Cicely, or I don't know if she did or not, but she been the same age since I was 2, so I don't be knowing. But he literally took care of her until death. So we do add value to our community, no matter what you do, as long as you're giving back to your community. Do it like it shall be there.
Can I piggyback off of that? Because I think that there's something that can be said about two things existing at one time. Somebody can be mediocre, but also be great in another area. So if there are times where, okay, maybe Tyler Perry doesn't do the best at storytelling like he used to in his plays, we can also say, well, I don't really like some of his writing right now, but I do like the fact that he is hiring more people, or let's just say 50 Cent buying more plots buying more land so that way we can hire more Black people, so we can get these stars paid like they should be paid. Because we ain't gonna talk about Taraji and the stuff that she done said about not being paid, especially under another Black mogul. So when we talk about all these things, when it comes to our people, let us be mediocre in one area, but also what if they're great in another area? And so we want to make sure we're telling a full story instead of just only highlighting, okay, no, he's not doing this right here, but what else is he doing? Okay, is this equal? Is this an equal contribution? Okay, he can be mediocre here, but he's picking up here. And can you live with that? Look at me sounding like a therapist. Can y'all live with that?
This is real life stuff. This is how people go through life. And this is how people end up struggling a lot. Because all we want to do as humans, or even within our culture as Black people, is focus on what people are not doing, or what you as a person are not doing. I know that I had a really bad habit for a long time. It's probably why my anxiety is where it's at now, of only focusing on what I wasn't doing. I need to do more. I need to climb. I need to grow. I need to constantly be trying to reach this, this, and this. But when is it enough? And so I think what you're talking about, we're talking about Tyler Perry and the media, but this is like real life. This is how people think, and this is how people live. And it makes life so hard when you can't pick out the positives. Like, I'm good. I've done this and I've done this. Doesn't mean you can't grow, but like
stretch y'all's bandwidth. Stretch y'all's bandwidth. It can stretch. Stretch that bandwidth.
And I also think. No, I was about to say. I also think like is what are you doing for others? So like as far as giving back to your community, when he did buy that big plot of land, 50 Cent brought it here. Shreveport is one of the poorest cities, like especially for Black people. Just to be giving other people jobs, that's enhancing mental health. That's enhancing the city. That's enhancing a full grown just plot of people. And actually, we're actually sowing back into our communities. And I think that we don't sow back into our communities enough. And so if you can do it on a large scale like that, I mean, just imagine the money that people can make. People could actually pay for mental health. I'm literally like, I started looking at Medicaid people this week. And I don't take Medicaid because the company that I work for doesn't take Medicaid. But I was talking to a woman who put her kid in therapy. He was at a Medicaid clinic. He had to see a different therapist every time he went. That's poor patient care. So getting some of this money back into the community and helping it trickle back down is going to I'm hoping, I see in the future that it's going to bring us to where we need to be. It's giving us what we need.
Speaking of going back into the community, there's been another incident that has happened when it comes to putting back into the community. As you all know, I don't know if you know, but Cam Newton was jumped at his youth football league. And there's a lot of discussion around Black people giving back to their communities and being treated like that. And so when I say stretch the bandwidth, I'm not a fan of Cam Newton as a man. I'm just not, because of the stuff he's done to his significant others and what I'm just not a fan. However, I can give credit where credit is due with him going back to his community, putting up those youth football leagues, trying to do something with his community. And then that's how we treat him. And I just don't think it's fair that people would jump that man or even fight that man. Like, that's just not appropriate. And so when we talk about our people giving back to our community, having the bandwidth and what we can critique and what we can't critique, I think it's just important for us to understand that there are different sides to people, and we can give grace sometimes, especially when they're doing what they need to do to help us.
Yeah.
That Cam Newton situation, I just found out about what actually happened through you, Auntie Keisha. And I'm just like, why does that keep happening? Even when it's something like Nipsey died in his own neighborhood. Now, I'm not saying Nipsey was just an all-around good person all the time. We know that he lived a certain type of life until he got into the rap game and tried to change his life. But to open up a business, to buy the block, to try to get back to your community, and then to be gunned down in front of your business when all you were trying to do was give back to your community. What's the dude in Memphis? Dolph, killed in his community. Mm-hmm. Like, you can't expect people. On one hand, it's like, give back to your community. Once you make it, come back. But it's hard. If my life is at stake, do I come back or do I get out of here and don't come back? Do I just support from afar? That makes it hard. We have to look at the balance of things. We always, just like we were just talking about, everybody want to lean one way or the other. There's a balance. There's space for both things. There's space for, I want to give back to my community, but my community also don't always do right and might try to take me alive.
So I want to get back to my community. I just don't want to move back to my community.
Thank you.
I'm gonna be the first one to said we aren't mature enough to have their gripes about people and simultaneously admire them for where they are great. In our communities, there is a lot of jealousy. especially when you make it. Like we talked about, what did we talk about? I can't remember how I framed it, but like survivor's remorse. So a lot of people go back in their community and they feel like I gotta stay connected. I gotta stay connected. You do have to stay connected, but you don't have to live amongst that community, because when you do make a certain amount of money, guess what? Your community is the have and the have-nots a lot of times, and they will rob you. They will take from you, and people will hurt you, because people are people. Human nature is survival of the fittest.
The crazy thing is, it ain't even a matter of moving back. Dolph didn't live in the community no more. He went back to get some donuts from his favorite spot. It just got shot up.
Yeah, but we're talking about certain lifestyles. When you live certain lifestyles, you can't just up and out. So sometimes
I
that's
guess,
just me.
I guess the question for me is what do we need to do? Like what is the accountability on our part? Because I haven't been feeling Black History Month this month because we're not taking accountability like we should be. Like we just not taking accountability on certain things that literally is putting people's lives in danger. Like how many more rappers are we going to see that's getting killed? How many more people are going to continue to go back to the communities and try to help out? And now everybody is fighting folks. So like what is the message that needs to happen?
Everybody need therapy.
Yes.
I'm gonna keep that on the screen the whole time.
Don't send them folk over here. Don't you send them folk over here.
Thank you, T.
And that, you know what? That's a tricky statement though. Everybody needs therapy. Everybody doesn't have access. We can sit here and talk about that and say that all we want, but we can't talk. We can't ignore the inequities. We can't ignore the problems with that. We can't ignore accessibility. We can't ignore those things. So everybody might need therapy, but everybody also needs good therapy. Everybody needs equitable therapy. Everybody, like, it can't just be trash therapy, because that ain't gonna help.
You know what? I think in addition to therapy, I think people need education on what certain things are. Because I literally just had somebody tell me today that they were doing well because weed was legal for people, for the community now, and health is first. And it was actually healing for people to have weed in our community. Now, I understand people got their own personal beliefs about marijuana, but I started thinking, like, did you not know that marijuana can literally induce psychosis? Like, I was just thinking to myself of how much this person had no clue. And I almost asked them, what peer-reviewed article did you read? But you know what? I didn't say that.
Yeah,
but
you got to back off because people get mad at you.
And I did it because I knew where I was going to go. And I was like, I'm not even going to say anything. But I thought, like, what are we doing when we're not even educating our community enough to understand, okay, here's what therapy can do. Here's what medication can do. Like, how do we even get there? Oh.
So one thing Bonita just said, she's hitting on something. The time it takes to find a good therapist is insane. That's true. And then that's in the practice that takes your insurance. That's true too. I think, so it takes us, right? I provide some pro bono work. I'm probably not the only person. I mean, I shouldn't be the only person that's providing pro bono work. It's actually in our ethical codes that we should provide some pro bono work. But
I mean, it's like recommend. I mean, it's like we don't gotta do it.
That's why I said should, because it's in your ethical code.
It is.
That for psychologists that you should provide some pro bono work. So I do have somebody, and she's a Black woman that I do pro bono work with because she doesn't have direct access. But I started putting out like resources. Like we put out some resources where you can kind of go online and go try to find a therapist, and you could actually Geronda, you could actually ask somebody, do you do a little pro bono work? And people have the right to say yes or no. But there are also like clinics and stuff. It's just we're in a mental health crisis right now. You can't even find regular health care. So just to hold us to that standard is hard.
God, Mika has a great question.
Who does?
Mika has
Oh, you want to do Mika's first? We can do that.
Oh, first. I didn't see Whitney's. I'm sorry, I didn't see Whitney's.
Okay, let's do Mika's, then we'll do Whitney's.
Oh, Mika. Okay. I do believe in therapy where and when needed, but what do you think about the children saying that the reason why they can't learn and do certain things is because they have anxiety or ADHD, but like the whole class saying it? Man, I just completed my paper on ADHD, and I'll tell you what, I think that that is sometimes a trendy thing as to what they hear adults say, because adults don't even know the difference. Some adults don't know the difference between ADHD and anxiety, and both of them can, they literally almost have like a 90% overlap in symptomology. So if you don't know what you're looking for, it's going to look like ADHD. Now, I'm not saying that there may be some kids in class who may have ADHD and who may need the additional assistance or medication or therapy. And there also may be some kids that also have anxiety or hell, even both. But I do think that with ADHD and autism and all this talk around mental health, I think that some of this is coming from social media and adults and parents. And I think that it needs to be thoroughly investigated if a child does have ADHD, anxiety, or other mental health disorders.
Well, and then some parents say my kid is ADHD. And
Mhm.
whenever I diagnose it, I say your kid is not ADHD. Your kid may have ADHD. Now, it might make your kid a little bit more hyperactive, or it may make, they may feel like they're run like with a battery in their back all day and stuff like that. But that doesn't mean that you stop chastising. It doesn't mean that you stop sitting them down to do homework. It doesn't mean that you stop parenting. You just have to parent a little bit more, and you have to parent a little bit different, because you have to parent the child. Children got to be parent regardless if they have depression, anxiety, ADHD, bipolar. They still have to be parented. And I think
Right.
that parents don't want to parent, they just want to medicate. Because I do see a lot of people that's like, give them medication. But guess what we are in right now? A medication crisis. A lot of people can't even find.
Yeah, can't get on medication.
And
Find
I
medication.
also think there's other disorders. Like sometimes we can talk about, and this may be this is something that isn't talked about a lot in the Black community, but sometimes your kids have learning disorders. Sometimes your kids have other disorders that are, that may be masked as anxiety or ADHD. And so it's important to understand what specific things that your child's struggling with. And sometimes it could even be something as silly, not as silly, but it could just be a social interaction that also makes your kid have anxiety or have some sort of like reaction or whatever. I mean, there could be a lot of things why your kid may be acting or saying those things. So that's why it's important to ask the right questions. Ask these kids questions.
and we
Auntie
can't really even be
Oh, go ahead.
No, Auntie Amber talked about this before, where she was talking about, is that kid hungry? So this week I learned that not learned because I already knew, but I taught at work that Huey Newton, was giving out fig Newtons for breakfast. Okay, I'm just playing. Huey Newton was
Why are you like this?
I'm sorry.
you on a really good
sorry.
yeah. Where she go?
The Black Panther Party provided breakfast for children. And they actually said in schools, principals actually reported that kids were not falling asleep anymore. Kids were actually up, alert, ready to learn. The test scores got better and everything. So sometimes we out here saying, you got ADHD and they hungry. Amber said that.
That's true.
That's true though. But also, we can't even
even
get too mad at the kids. Can we really be mad at the kids who come in school based off of what they hear adults say about social media? Grown people doing this. Grown people are self-diagnosing through TikTok instead of going to school. And if the grown people doing it, of course the kids are going to do it. We have to lead by example as adults. We can't just, yes, you might see or hear something on social media that resonates with you and makes you think, okay, maybe that's me. But go the step further as an adult and as a parent. If you see something that triggers your mind to say, "Oh, that sound like my child," then go the extra step. It can't just stop at, "Oh, yeah, I saw it on social media. That's what it is." That's the problem. I think is that we don't go the next step.
Yeah.
Y'all getting on my nerves because y'all talking too much, and I'll be wanting to say something, then somebody else, and then now I done lost what I wanted to say. But I did want to say what Auntie Shug said is one of the things I was gonna say is sometimes kids don't recognize like what's going on with them, but they know something ain't right, and it could be that they're hungry, it could be that they're sleepy, whatever it is. And I think I saw we got like 50 comments, but somebody commented sometimes the kids know like that something's not right. I just had a recent situation where my daughter has been diagnosed with ADHD. She's been diagnosed for I don't know about 1 or 2 years now, but she never knew it. There was no reason for me to tell her. She does struggle with learning in school. We work on those skills because with ADHD or any of these disorders, It's about learning the skills to compensate for whatever the deficit is or whatever it is you're having trouble with. So though you have the disorder, that don't give you no excuse to be acting all crazy in class talking about I got ADHD. No, you're gonna learn how to regulate, how to self-regulate and control. That's what I work with kids on. I'm like, no, we're gonna give you some tools and you are going to learn how to self-regulate. You cannot depend on your teacher to regulate for you or your parents to regulate for you. But my daughter did mention the other day, she asked me what is ADHD because one of my friends in class has it and they act like they can't sit down or do nothing. And she was going off and I was like, well, you have ADHD. Did you know that? And she was like, me? Nuh-uh, because I don't do this, this, and this. I'm like, no, because we have worked on the skills for you to not do that, that, and that. But you have it too. And so her seeing the difference, like the things that she actually works on in class, she has to talk to herself and tell herself, like, no, this is not the time for me to get up. This is not the time for me to shout or dance or sing. She's always singing and humming. She does the self-talk. That's a skill that we've worked on. And she's able to focus in class and she's brought her grades up. So when kids say that, it's like, okay, yeah, maybe you do have anxiety or you have ADHD tendencies, but what are you doing about it? You just going to sit back and keep using it as an excuse, or are you actually going to do something to help yourself? That's how I approach it with kids. That's all I'm saying. But there was another question about teachers somewhere.
Well, hold on. We didn't do Whitney's.
We're going to go because this one is right along the lines of what we're talking about.
Well, what about teachers who willingly ignore accommodations?
Illegal. I have that case right now.
It's illegal. It's illegal.
Yes, it is illegal.
It's illegal. It's illegal. It's illegal.
Say something.
And the reason why it's illegal is because the IEP or whatever type of document that you have is probably a legal document, which means it has to be followed by the state.
Yep, a 504 plan is a legal document.
Yes, that is a legal document, and it's illegal that they are not following that. So if you do have like support systems, like we have SSTs in the state of Ohio, those are consultants that go into the schools. So if there's any sort of like consultant person that's at the state level, they're able, hopefully, go into the schools to help with helping these teachers implement those accommodations that is on that illegal document. So no, teachers cannot ignore accommodations.
And you can go to the school board. Like, people don't like to make trouble, but honestly, I teach my parents, you are your kid's advocate. Nobody is going to advocate for your kid the way you're going to advocate them. Even teachers, you are those kids' advocates. They can't stand up and say, hey, they're ignoring my accommodations. All they know is that they're failing. So if you go and stand up for them and go to the school board saying, Little Peanut ain't getting his accommodations, somebody has to do something. And when they don't do anything, you just elevate. You elevate until you get what you need.
Yep. And she just said it in the words of my retired teacher mama, go get you a lawyer and watch the school comply.
Yeah. And talk to them in, like, I don't know what state you're in, but in Ohio we have tiers. So there's tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. So tier 1 is like general like interventions. Tier 2 is a little bit more specific things that they need to, maybe have a little bit more just more specific interventions for that student. And then tier 3 is like the top interventions that they should have and written out legal documents. So when you start talking in tiers, then they're going to know that you know something and they're going to get right in line.
Benita in Texas, the next face she just gave makes me worried. Texas and Florida always makes me worried.
So I have 2 comments on this. So one is with the accommodations, you need to know whether your accommodations are like formal, like they are documented, or whether they're informal, because there have been situations with parents where the teacher tells them, oh yeah, I'll make sure that I give her extra time or do this, do that, and the other. And they take that as like formal accommodations. And then when they try to go and talk to the principal and say this isn't happening, the teacher's like, I didn't say that, and there's no documentation for that. So just make sure that there is an actual IEP or a 504 plan. The second part to that is there are people, they are called IEP advocates. So they have some kind of law degree, or I don't know, they're not lawyers, but they like work with the schools to make sure that you do what you're supposed to do. And I feel like they've been in every state I've worked in. I've worked in 3 or 4 different states. So if you don't have the money or the resources to get an actual lawyer, you can look into finding an IEP advocate in your community. And some of them do pro bono work, and some of them you have to pay for. So,
and to spin off what Auntie Amber said, if a teacher does tell you that they're going to accommodate your child, request a meeting, and that meeting should consist of the school psychologist, the teacher, the principal, and if that school has a social worker or an IEP person on staff, that's who that meeting should consist of. There should be documents filled out. There should be things you have to review and sign. That's how you know this is an official IEP and my student has to be accommodated, instead of somebody just telling you word of mouth and then it doesn't happen and you can't really do anything about it. You want to have these sit down meetings in these schools with these professionals at the school.
Well, and it's not a meeting that you should have to call either. Like, it's a meeting that's actually called through the school for accommodations. Like, I used to have to sit in on those meetings. There's a school psychologist, there's all the teachers, there's typically a clinical psychologist that's saying why did these things need to be reinforced. They have the testing there, they have the IEP there. It's a legal document that you actually sign. And a parent.
I had to call the meeting.
Well, you probably request it, like you say, like, hey, I think my kid needs accommodations, and then they do their eligibility process or whatever and decide whether there's going to be like a full-on IEP meeting or whether it's just going to be like a smaller type of meeting. So usually it starts with the parent's request or a teacher's request, and then it goes from there. But I'm going to take us back to Whitney's question about therapy. I gotta find it. How do you get people to trust therapy after having a bad experience? I believe that was the question.
Yeah, I remember seeing it.
What are best practices for getting people to trust therapy after they've had a bad experience?
Well, I would say I typically will ask them first what they even think therapy is, like what, like, and a part of them like knowing like their perspective of what they think therapy is, kind of giving them that power back as far as like they have the right to look for other therapists and they have an opportunity to shop around just like they would shop anywhere else to get a second opinion. Like just say like your car, you needed your car to get fixed, but somebody quoted you $15,000 and they wanted to do all this stuff when really you went over across the street to Ray and them and they quoted you half of that and then, you know what I mean, like gave you, you know, some good service and was very nice and stuff and generous and stuff. So again, it depends on what you're looking for and giving them the power back. And I think that a lot of people think that if they have to stay with the therapist they don't like, and that's just not true. It's just not true. So validating that experience, seeing what their perception is of therapy, and then telling them that they got options. You got options, boo.
And I mean, treat it just like anything else. Like if you had a bad experience with a doctor, that's not going to stop you from finding another doctor because you need a doctor. Mm-hmm. If you feel like you need a therapist, okay, you had a bad experience. We are all very different. All therapists work differently. We do different things. We have different specialties. We have different personalities that show up in our work. So you just have to, that's what let's call finding your therapeutic fit. You have to find where you fit. So don't give up because you had that bad experience. Right. You had bad experiences in a lot of areas in life and you find something new. You have bad restaurant experiences, a bunch of them. And you find something new that you like.
And to Ashley's point too, a lot of the healing is based on a therapeutic relationship. So when you connect with somebody, just like when you have a friend, some people don't blossom until they get a friend, till they get that friend that's their soulmate. That's kind of how it is for your therapist. When you have a therapist and y'all just connect and it's just divine intervention, that's when the healing starts. So 70% of it is the therapeutic relationship. And then the rest of it is between you. The rest of it, the work is actually being done by you. And then the therapist is actually facilitating the work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
And I always make sure to ask what the bad experience was, because I have had several situations where it was actually a terrible experience. Like the therapist told them something or to do something and it made no sense clinically. And I'm like, why would they do that? Okay, well, this is how I work. But I've also had situations where, especially with adults, where the bad experience is that their therapist called them out on something and they didn't like it. And they didn't want to go back and didn't want to be in therapy anymore because they called them out. And in those situations, I have to be real with you. Like, I'm a very direct therapist. I don't sugarcoat nothing. And I'm going to call you out. You're not going to harm me with your personality, and I'm going to be up here like, oh my God, you're my favorite client. No, girl, I'm calling you out. You might be my favorite client, but I'm also going to let you know what's up. So it is also letting them know, this is my approach. This is how I am. If you had a therapist who had a similar approach to me and you didn't respond well to that, then you might not be a good fit for me. We might need to find you someone else who's more client-centered or more solution-focused or something like that.
So good, Amber. People forget about saying that. Accountability, and they don't like it.
I just got fired recently, y'all. I tell y'all my fire story.
Everybody's getting fired, Sean.
This is my second time. The one time I got fired because she wanted me to tell her she was autistic, and I was like, "Ain't nothing wrong with you. You have an identity crisis. You're not autistic." And she was like, "You're not gonna diagnose me autistic, and you gotta go." And I was like, "Okay." So that was fine. This one I got fired. It was a marriage counseling, and the woman was the problem, and she was in there bugging out. And so she started hollering in the session, and I was like, "What we don't do in here is yell at me. We're not doing that." And I was like, "So, are you that controlling in other areas?" That's exactly what I said. Who are you calling controlling? The person who's trying to control what we talk about in this session. So she decided that she was never going to come back to me. So I said, it's fine. So the husband stayed with me, right? So he's now my client. They found another marriage and family that she did the same thing. And then fired the therapist. So I was validated. But my point was, people hate to be called out on stuff because they don't like to look in the mirror. And sometimes you just have to have somebody that make you look in the mirror. And when you're not the person that likes to look in the mirror, it can be difficult to find a match for you.
Pro tip that I got from a professor in undergrad. She said to me, if all of your clients are always cheerful and happy and glad to see you and leaving sessions happy, you might not be digging deep enough. She said, your client, as a client, they should leave there being introspective and possibly being triggered and, attacked sometimes because they have to really look within and work on themselves. And that's how it works. She said, that ain't nothing to be happy about all the time. They shouldn't always leave your session smiling. I said, okay.
The exception to that is kids. That's the exception.
And that's why I don't work with kids.
Because with kids, them little people, they be happy, skipping, hopping, jumping. You could have did the best emotional work possible, and they leave up out the office still happy, skipping, and jumping.
Love kids.
I love kids so much. They're awesome.
Kids in my life. I don't love kids.
But I will tell y'all, you can fire a therapist. I've been fired twice. A lot of people don't therapy sessions. They stay with a therapist that's mediocre because they don't want to fire somebody. They feel like, I don't want to hurt their feelings. You're not going to hurt somebody's feelings if you're not. You ain't for everybody, and it is okay.
And if it's a good therapist, they tell you that in the beginning. They tell you, hey, this may not be a good fit, and it's okay. We can get through the first maybe 2 sessions, and if this is not something that you feel in, okay, I can help you find another therapist. So a good therapist.
I'm even okay with clients.
I've been fired. Well, every time I get fired, they come back. And this is why right here. Benita says she challenges herself more unconsciously after being called out. Because when I call you out initially, you get mad at me. You want to fire me. You don't want to have nothing to do with me. And then you email me a couple days later, like, you know what? I overreacted. Can we schedule another session? Because I really need to talk about what happened the last session. That's what usually happens. They're like, come on. I ain't coming back no more. And I'm like, okay.
I will say specifically as a Black woman, I fired a therapist before because I could sense that she was afraid to be direct with me. I was like, I can't take you being all sugary and sensitive and telling me, no. I need somebody to call me out. And I feel like some therapists might be afraid of that with maybe Black women in particular or women of color. And I'm like, no, I'm a direct person. I need that directness. If you gonna hit me with that soft little pillow, I can't do it. So I had to leave. I was like, I need somebody that's gonna be more straight with me, more upfront.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then just to comment on what Sherry says here, this is something that you'll experience in therapy that you may not like. One problem, you think the source of it is I lost my job and I'm all sad and I can't deal with it. And then you keep digging and it ends up being something more. And a lot of the times it's some kind of childhood stuff that you done suppressed and it comes out and you're like, oh, I can't deal with it. So it sounds like that was partially her experience here.
Yeah.
Yep.
Or people come in and they say, what happened to me the day I got fired? It was a few weeks ago, but was we're going to talk about this. We want to talk about my neighbors. We want to talk about this. We want to talk about that. But we in marriage counseling. We're not talking about your neighbors. We talking about your marriage. So sometimes people want to direct the conversation when you kind of need to let it flow. And let's talk about why you for real here. Because otherwise we just playing.
Mm-hmm. Right. I tell people all the time, listen, like, don't waste your money. What you doing? I will come out and tell somebody, then why you here? What you doing here? I will, in a heartbeat. What you doing here? And they be like, you right. Yeah.
If you do need to, it's okay to ghost your therapist. This has come up where people are like, don't ghost your therapist, let them know that you don't have to do that. You can ghost your therapist because I understand the power dynamic. There's a power dynamic we as therapists have to acknowledge. We are the professional, you are the client, and some clients do have that fear of, well, I don't want to tell them that I don't want to see them anymore. You don't have to. You don't show up 3 times and you off my roster if you don't call me and tell me what's going on. So you can go, because some clients really have a fear of sending that email or making that phone call or saying it in the session, this is going to be my last session because I don't think this is working out. That's okay. Also, as therapists, we should be doing check-ins. I do check-ins a lot. How is it going? How is therapy going for you? Does this still feel like a fit for you or not? Because if it doesn't, that's okay. So, like, there are ways to do it, but you absolutely can ghost if you just feel uncomfortable.
I ain't never been ghosted before. So when you said that, I was like, ghost me? For real? Like, you just ain't gonna say that? You just say that a couple
Yeah, you got plenty of clients do that, but some people come in, get what they need, and they all right. And I'm okay with that.
I'm okay with that too, because some people just have clients. It's like, I see you every week. If I got to see you every week for a year, there's a higher level of care needed. We should be working towards the goal of mental wellness.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I just assume my patients are okay if they ghosted me or they went to someone else. Okay.
But I have a different perspective on that, but that could be because of the supervisor that I first worked with that trained me. She is a long-term therapist. I know several long-term therapists. I've heard a lot of now Black therapists in the field saying that. There is nothing wrong with long-term therapy. It's just that a lot of therapists don't like it and they don't feel like you're progressing or you're growing. If you are actively working on things, because life be life. If things are coming up, you're actively working on things. And for some people, therapy is just another form of support. And I think we struggle with that idea in the field that, they just want to meet every week because that's another way for them to process things or hash out certain things. And they don't have anybody else. Some people genuinely don't have anybody else. So don't feel bad if you are in long-term therapy. And it's like, you should be good by now. You should still be in therapy. And that could just be me because I have worked with therapists who work long-term like that. And it's not always detrimental.
There's nothing wrong with long-term therapy, but if you're doing therapy with somebody and it's actually working, once a week is a lot. That's a lot of therapy.
I go to monthly check-ins once you do.
Yeah, like it should. The latency between sessions should decrease because after a while, you're not even once a week. You're not even giving people time to work through problems. Right. And then if you are their only hope, then there's another problem right then and there too. So you got to kind of, there's a very, very fine line. Some people are in therapy for 10 years, but they're not seen once a week for 10 years. And I tell my patients, if I have to see you twice a week, we're looking at inpatient because Come on, like we have to be. You're working towards being independent, not dependent on a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
Benita, and also remember that therapy is not just talking. Like when you're working with someone long term, like clinically, there are clinical goals. Even if your therapist hasn't outright said to you, these are the goals we're working on, your therapist should have some kind of goals, some kind of like markers that tells them whether you're making progress or not. I have several long-term clients that I've been seeing for 2+ years now. At least 3 adults, I believe, and 1 kid. But and it's not weekly anymore. We're actually moving towards transitioning out. When people have been in therapy for 2 or 3 years, it is very difficult. Even if they have a support system, it's hard for them to fathom not having that touch point. Yeah. But there's always been a goal in mind. And I really try hard not to lose sight of that. And with my adult clients, my teenage clients, and my young adults, they know what their treatment goals are. They know when we're looking towards starting to reduce sessions. Like, yes, we talk about stuff. We talk, we have a good time, we laugh. But at the end of the day, you're doing that anxiety rating scale for me. And if those numbers go down over the next 6 months or so, then we're looking at reducing you to once a month, once every couple of months until it's time for you to transition out. So I know a lot of people think in therapy, you're just talking. Yeah, you could be coming in just talking, but your therapist should have clinical goals in mind, something that you're working towards.
Interventions.
Those goals may look different, but because I'm CBT, so I'm more of like rating scales, numbers. We're seeing where that's going. But there should be some kind of goals, something that you're working towards. And if you don't know what it is, ask your therapist. And if they tell you they don't have none, run.
Right.
And Benita, it does change. And over time, it can change. You can start doing monthly. You can wean off and start going monthly, like for a monthly check-in. But if something changes, then it switches right back to maybe once every other week, once a week. So you had a medication change. Okay, that might warrant we coming back to every week just to check on you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I see kids. I see kids 0 to 6 who have experienced very significant traumatic backgrounds. So I have to see them once a week. So my and again, it depends on the client and it depends on the population you're seeing. Every single auntie, what they've said is definitely valid. And all of us got different experiences. But I definitely agree. I just see my kids every week because them was my babies and they got stuff going on.
I already said a lot of factors involved. It's the type of modalities the therapists use. It's the client population. It's a lot of different factors that go into how long you are going to see a client, how often you are going to see a client. Like I work from a womanist/feminist therapy framework. That looks very different from CBT. That looks very different. So it's just different.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I have had clients too where I've seen them. I think the least amount of time I've worked with a client was 3 months. And I remember her because when I say homegirl did her therapy work, she did her therapy work. Wasn't no, oh, you didn't do your homework this time. Okay, I'm not going to get on you. Let's try it. Like she was on it and she was discharged within 3 months. Granted, I think the following year, probably about 6 to 8 months later, she reached out and said, you know what, I need a refresher. Like, I feel like we need to work on the same skills again, but for a different situation. And that happens too. So it can be short term, it can be long term, whatever it is that you need. But the biggest thing is making sure that you know what you're working towards and not being surprised when your therapist is like, all right,
time to go.
Got to make space for somebody else now. You good. You good.
I'm assuming SFBT is solution focused behavioral therapy. And if it is solution focused, it's short term, baby. 6 to 8 problem focused. Like, what's your problem? Let's get to it. Get on out. And I love the fact that you realize you're not good with long term commitments. Like therapists got to realize what they're good at too. Like this ain't my thing. Like all of us, I think, have come into a place where we know what we like to work with, what we don't, and people have to realize it's okay for a therapist to not like certain things. It's okay for her to say, I ain't with the long term. I ain't doing it.
Well, and it's not even I ain't doing long term. It's just that if you're not meeting goals, then I might not be helping you. So if you're once a week for 10 years, somebody ain't doing something right. That's me. Now, if you're once, because talk therapy is talking, right? If you want a friend you want to come talk to, that's different. But if we're doing outcome assessments, we're seeing your anxiety be reduced, we're seeing your depression be reduced, where you're getting over the kind that you getting through your grief and stuff like that. You do need time to life on your own without somebody holding your hand. Just like your kids grow up, they don't stay in your house until they die. They launch. And so eventually you do want to launch. So that's not to say like, oh, you can't have the same therapist. I've had some clients for a few years, but they've gone and they've come back when they're like, oh shoot, you know what? Things are kind of happening again. I got triggered again. But not just to be like, let me stringing you along once a week and we doing the same stuff and we just coming up in here talking like, no, we're not playing. If we're not meeting goals, then we need to reroute and see what's going on. Because also when you're not meeting goals, you're not meeting goals because the sessions become friendly. We're not friends. We doing work. You doing work because it's your life.
I see that a lot more with my couples. Couples at some point couples have a cutoff. Couples have a cutoff and they often come back with different stages in life. Like I saw a couple one time, they were going through problems. They got everything. They grew. They learned goals. They learned tools. They left. I discharged them. She got pregnant. She was like, she called me. She was like, nope, a second baby coming into the house. We need help. I said, well, come on back. That's a whole nother life transition. Come on back.
Mm-hmm. One thing that is hard is having the language to discuss with loved ones the withdrawals that come with medication changes.
Yes. Yeah. That's a very difficult thing for a lot of us to do because sometimes we're not exposed to those things. So we don't know what to say or never even experienced them before. So it is hard to tell somebody else something and then they don't get it because they've never experienced it. And yeah, that's crazy. Yeah.
And that's hard, even as a professional. Transparency moment. There was a moment a while ago, months ago, where I stopped taking my medication. And I told Dr. Shields, she said, that's what was wrong with you. That was what was going on. You was acting insane. I said, yeah, I was irritated and irritable as hell. And I didn't realize that if I skipped for too many days, it was going to quickly impact me. And I didn't even realize it. So you got to be real careful with that. And it's very hard to have other people understand it because they just like, oh, you done lost your mind.
Yeah. I'm quick to say, get back on your medication. Get back on your medication. But some people don't, they have an aversion to medication. So medication makes them squeamish, which shames the person that has to take medication. Ooh, that's going to be for another day.
That's why your provider should be educating you about the side effects so that way you know what to expect.
Yes. And please, for the love of God, do not stop taking a medication on your own. There's a process to coming off of medications that you get from mental health providers. Don't just say, oh, I feel better. I'm good. I ain't going to take it no more. Baby, you're going to mess yourself up. It's
not even mess yourself up. You can have cardiac arrest.
Yes. There are.
Let's not do that.
Things that could happen. So go the proper route, talk to your psychiatrist, psychologist, whoever, and wean off the way you're supposed to. This ain't something that you just cut cold turkey because you feel it.
That's true.
Hey, I'm just saying.
I'm just laughing because Ashley's telling y'all from experience.
Damn right.
Get back on your medication.
Yeah, girl.
I want y'all to hear that in your head whenever you like, I'm just going to stop taking it. Listen to me say, get back on your medication.
She asked me, how many days have you skipped? And I didn't even know. I was like, it's probably been like a week and a half. She was like, take your medicine. Get back. Because I was like, you don't even realize it. And you be wondering, why am I so irritated? Why am I so this? Why am I so that? That's why, honey. You wasn't ready.
Yeah.
Well, I've been off of my medication for a while, but I replaced my medication with coping skills. So I don't have the same physical sensations in response to stress anymore because I've learned different coping skills. So this is not us telling you to stay on medication forever and never get off of it. This is us telling you when you start to realize that you have the coping, even if your body feels better, if you don't have the coping skills, you can wean yourself off with your doctor and you're gonna get right back on it because you don't know what to do when your body starts feeling that way again. So ideally, you would start with therapy and medication. You learn the skills, you start to wean yourself off the medication, use your skills, maintain your progress, use therapy when needed. But if you're relying on that medication like completely to regulate your emotions and keep you calm, then that's a problem. You got to learn how to cope on your
But
own.
nuanced part of the discussion is some diagnosis that you need your medication and you're not gonna come off. Let's just be clear.
Oh yeah.
There are diagnoses that you will get that you're not coming off of your medication. You need your medication, period.
Yeah, I'm talking about more of the skills, like the environmental types of disorders, situational, not like bipolar or anything that has to do with your body's imbalances.
Right, chemical imbalances, that's it.
Yeah.
Well, y'all were great tonight. Let me just say, all this interaction was amazing tonight.
Yeah.
We love it.
Yeah.
So
All
what
right.
we encourage you guys to do, because we got to actually wrap it up, is if you have any additional questions, please put them in the chat. Go ahead and go to our inbox. We're trying to keep it down to an hour so that we can respect everybody's time. I got kids that gotta go to bed, so I actually do have to go. But just if you have questions, putting it in the chat. Asking the auntie, you can ask all aunties or you can ask one auntie the questions. We are striving to answer those questions. And also, if you could give us some episode suggestions if there are some things that you want to see or some things that you want to talk about.
And also, we are going to keep reiterating every live and soon every week. Y'all, we got an in-person clinical cookout coming up. Please know that July 13th is pretty much set in stone for the first in-person clinical cookout in Cleveland, Ohio. It will be a mental health conference and cookout all in one. So you're going to get workshops, you're going to get a panel, and you're going to have a cookout with food and spades and other games and baskets. It's going to be a good time. And the registration for that is opening up in April. So be prepared to take a trip to Cleveland, Ohio for our first official cookout.
All right. Go ahead, Shug.
So we talked about medication, we talked about school. Hopefully we talked about everything that y'all want to talk about. I gotta go put my kids to bed, so I just want to know what y'all about to do.